Since time immemorial, well, ever since someone asked John Romero what the holes on the back end of a Cacodemon were for, discussion of said holes has been deemed forbidden. For if Romero can't talk about those holes, nobody can talk about those holes. Today, however, I am here to blow those holes wide open, penetrate deep into the bowels of this mystery, and truly answer the question, under pain of inevitable death via an elite Romero tech death squad, of what those holes are really for. But before we get to that, first we have to examine the origins of this creature and discover what gave rise to the thing we know and love as the Cacodemon. If we're going back to its OG Doom design, which we very much are, it is no secret that the Cacodemon has its roots in Dungeons and Dragons. Probably the most prominent and obvious inspiration is the Astral Dreadnought, a huge creature with a very familiar looking head, a single large eye, a menacing grimace lined with razor-sharp teeth. In fact, the resemblance here is so uncanny, it's almost as if id literally copied and pasted the damn thing. Like what they did? Oh. Requiring neither food, liquid, or even the occasional nap to survive, the Astral Dreadnought largely menaced the astral projections of travelers that it encountered in where else but the astral plane. Of course! Funnily enough though, if you got eaten by an Astral Dreadnought, it wouldn't outright kill you, though I imagine the pincers and teeth wouldn't make the process anything resembling pleasant. No, instead, you would be sent to yet another plane of existence with its own gravity, atmosphere, functioning magic system, and conveniently placed drive-through Starbucks, all contained within the Dreadnought itself. Legend has it that an Astral Dreadnought's serpentine lower half could theoretically stretch off into infinity, so obviously that's the first thing to go when it comes to the genesis to Cacodemon. I imagine an infinite body would be tough for even Carmack to implement. That said, give the man enough time. The upper half of the body was out too. No pincers here, no armor-plated upper body, all that's left is the head. Only now it has a potential problem with mobility. When it comes to floating, I'd say that the Beholder is the other piece of the puzzle. Now you might be asking, why didn't they just go with the Beholder in the first place? Well, the answer is simple. This guy's head is much cooler than this guy's head. That's literally it. So what you do, slap this guy's head over this guy, chop off those spare eye stalks, and boom! You got everyone's favorite round, projectile-puking, gravity-defying, demonic meatball. So, with the issues of its genesis cleared up, this brings us back to the question, what are the holes for? And why does it have two of them? Why, John? Why can't you talk about the goddamn holes, John? That said, there's still other avenues we need to explore here, because the Cacodemon is a creature that is subject to certain subtle variations across the Doomiverse. I said subtle Doom 64. I mean, God, those arms. For one, they're far too useful looking. Not to mention those shackles. It just looks like it's escaped from a BDSM session in a mud pit. If anything, at this point you remind me more of the Doom Pain Elemental, which raises the question of how that thing even looks in Doom 64.
No! No! No!
Anyway, one particular detail of note remains consistent across these Cacodemon variants, a curious absence that puts them at odds with the original Doom Caco design. That's right, none of these Cacos have any dang buttholes. Well, maybe the Doom 3 Caco has a butthole or two, but honestly, it's kind of tricky to find a rear-end snapshot of these things, short of actually playing Doom 3 and trying to get a good look at the Jaxie myself. Oh hey, what do you know? With all that in mind, I've come to the conclusion that I now view any other Caco outside of the original Doom entries as more multiversal cousins to the original Caco rather than coming from the same line. Mainly because just look at Doom 64, but also because if you view them all as the same species, it removes some of the more fun possibilities that can be found while gazing thoughtfully up that rear end. Okay, no more beating around the bush, it's finally time to talk about those holes. So, how exactly do these holes operate? I prefer to think of these as more intake and exhaust. Firstly, this gives a nice excuse for how the Cacodemon is able to maneuver itself around instead of just ineffectually floating there like some kind of demonic balloon. As for the intake, I see that as fulfilling two potential purposes. One, feeding the propulsive exhaust, and 2. Providing an element of fuel to power that plasma-esque projectile that the Caco can occasionally vomit at you from afar. Now that may sound neat and tidy, but in all honesty there's a final piece to the puzzle that we may need to account for here. If the Caco is driven by a singular desire to feed, as mentioned in the Doom Eternal lore files, something that we can assume is still the case with the OG Caco, then what happens to the stuff it eats? Now, one possibility is there may still be a smidge of Astral Dreadnought DNA kicking about in the Caco, and everything simply gets ejected into some kind of pocket dimension. But personally, I choose to believe that the Caco is a strong proponent of recycling and reuse, taking the material consumed through the mouth, infusing it with whatever process the intake hole assists with, before puking the material back out in the form of that offensive plasma-esque projectile. But how do you boil this down to a singular cohesive statement? Something that you can rock up to a complete stranger with the sole purpose of just wowing them with your Eldritch Doom knowledge. I feel like it should follow thusly. The Cacodemon breathes through its ass and poops from its mouth. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. But hey, this is just a theory. A Caco theory! But honestly, those holes are meant to be explored deeply, not locked away from curious eyes. What I'm saying here is that id, both the teams that launched the originals and those that helm the ship now, should be proud that the Caco has buttholes. And the Pain Elemental too. If anything, they should be seen as vital components, an essential bit of biology that contributes to how a Caco even works as a creature. Hugo, Marty, you know what needs to be done. Things need to be made right. Bring back the buttholes. Make the Caco have holes again.